The Publishing Club welcomes you to the club's first author forum. The event was held in the Clubhouse 2 patio of Laguna Woods, where 18 authors each had a table where they could display their books and share information about themselves and their books. Hello, I'm Sunshine Lodi. I've been a member of PubClub since 2015, when the club began publishing the yearly Village Stories books. Because of my musical friend, Phil Silverman, who paid my first year's membership fee in the club, I became a published author. Peggy Edwards, our president, encouraged me to share my stories and poems, and with the knowledge I gained from our monthly meetings and the support of other members, I learned to self-publish my books. So, my profound thanks to the PubClub, or Publishing Club. I mentioned that Phil is a musical friend. Yes, in 2015, Phil joined the Sunshine Performance Club, a club my husband, David Hartman, and I started in 2007, producing 2 musical shows yearly from 2008 through 2019. Through the years, Phil shared many interesting ideas with me. One of those ideas was to start today's event with the song, "I Could Write a Book." In 1940, it was published by Richard Rogers and Lorenz Hart. The 1989 film, When Harry Met Sally, included the song, as did the film Deconstructing Harry in 1997. And here it is.
And if they asked me, I could write a book about the way you walk, you whisper and you live. I could write the preface of how we met, so the world will never forget. And the simple secret of the plot is just to tell them that I love you a lot. Then the world discovers, as my book ends, how you make 2 lovers a friend.
You might want to sit here.
I could write a book.
The first thing I want to do is thank Peggy and Nancy and Sunshine, who have always gone above and beyond to put things on for us. They deserve a ton of credit. And I'm happy to all of you folks who came today. And then just a couple quick things. I've got a bunch of books over there, as you know. I'm going to donate some of the proceeds to Ukrainian relief for humanitarian purposes. So if I sell any, it's going to help them too. And this first group, I'm going to start with the short stuff first. These are some of the haiku and senryu. I'm dedicating this part of it to my friend Helen Russell. Helen Russell put out her first book at the age of 99, and she won a national prize. So So for all of you people thinking, oh, it's a little late for me to, no, it isn't. That's that. So, okay, so I'm going to read those, and then I have 2 short poems. I'll give you a little time to process them because they are short. Winter chill. Not one key works. April 1st. The snowblower. Silent at last. Born again. The river baptism leaves him cold. IRS refund. 1 full tank of gas. A game of bocce. The wine drinkers full of advice. Beachcombing. Our yellow submarine in dry dock. Midnight in Kyiv. The slow descent of snow and ashes. Red eyes of mother and daughter. Waiting, waiting. Just a glance. The road not taken between us. May wedding. Wildflowers in abundance. Age spots on clasped hands. Heads lean in. Okay, and then these next 2 poems on the short side, mainly concerned with the environment and our relationship to it. This poem is called On the Brink. Winter's long shadows constrict. Clouds pregnant with snow move north, evaporating in a breeze that kindly warms the skin. Now the bear in its den awakens in a groggy but ravenous mood, as robins fly homeward bound, and the stream's lost voice returns. No more do smokestacks ravage air. Spring's lusty scent is floral, and dogwood trees lately empty fill branches with their blossoms. As bees and butterflies pollinate, farmers plant their seeds and act upon a leap of faith in a climate where nothing's assured. Will it rain too much or not enough? Earth slips from fire to flood, and wind whips grain from dry, parched fields, or strips the orchard of fruit. There is no such thing as new normal. We teeter between extremes. And this one is called Ley Lines of the Heart. This once seedling, now an oak, umbrellas me with shade, and the freely flowing river of youth has silted to a trickling stream. And mountains which once held up sky sit flattened into fields, stamped in squares of endless corn or sliced into winter wheat. And waves shoot coastlines of dwindling beach as glaciers calve their ice, while kudzu spiders its growing web, entwining wood and vine. And yet the squirrels chatter on, the goldfinch asks her questions, as I pet the neighbor's friendly dog, smiling the dolphin's smile. And I learned to fly like a red-tailed hawk, rising up on the thermals, from just a passing cloud, as stars are bright before me. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming, and also for writing, and keep on writing. I have a couple of little notes, and because of my concussion, I wrote them down. We'd like a shout out for our wonderful club president, Miss Peggy, Nancy, and Sunshine. Both so talented. I love every time Sunshine sings, and she didn't dance, but she dances too. And not to forget my lovely bride, Lynn, is assisting me today. And one last thing, I'm making this brief so somebody else could have more time, like Phil or somebody. Everybody should buy at least one book, or maybe two. Thank you.
Thank you, Peggy, and I also want to thank Nancy and Sunshine for all the help they always give to me and to everyone that's in this club. I've been in the club since 2014, I think it's been. So even though I don't get to attend all of the meetings, I look at all the emails and I look at everything that's coming through. I don't live here, I live in Dana Point, so they're gracious enough to let me be part of this great organization, so I appreciate that. I've written 2 books, and as Peggy said, I write about women in the Bible. These women have done brave and courageous deeds for the glory of God. I call it Bible's Bad Girls for the first one, because back in the 60s when I was a teenager, the slang was when you saw something that was really good, you'd say, oh, that's so bad. So when I started reading about women in the Bible and the things that they would do, the brave and courageous things they would do, leading people and going to war and just accepting what they were supposed to do, I thought, wow, that's really bad. And so that's why I started writing about them. In both of my books, I include 4 women from the Old Testament and 4 women from the New Testament. There are questions to ask, so you could use it as maybe a study guide, Bible study or something. The stories are written in first person, and I oftentimes will perform those stories in first person for churches, Bible studies, teas, luncheons, whatever you can think of. I like to do that. I also wrote 7 songs that are more like learning songs more than they are like something you'd go around singing a whole lot of, but they'll teach you more about women of the Bible. Like one of my songs is called the ABCs, Women of the Bible, and I took each letter of the alphabet and found a different woman for that letter. So think about that, how many you know in the Bible. I know when I was growing up, I only knew maybe 5 women. There are over 200. But thank you for the opportunity of telling you about my books, and come by and I'll be more than happy to talk to you more. Thanks. Peggy, I'll leave these up here.
Okay, I don't know if this is a good idea to have a pastor go up here and talk for 5 minutes, but anyways, yeah, Carmen came to me 7 years ago, and I was a pastor at Calvary Church, and I didn't know anything about her story. I didn't know her, and I didn't know anything that much about cancer, and I certainly didn't know that much about glioblastoma. But the more I studied it, I quickly learned that this is the nasty, really the worst of the worst cancers, with only a 14-month survival rate, and that's the average. This is the same cancer that killed John McCain, Beau Biden, Edward Kennedy, and there was a young woman named Brittany Maynard who took her own life after she was diagnosed with a glioblastoma, and she became kind of the face of the Right to Die movement. But glioblastoma didn't know what it had met its match in Carmen. As I got to know her, I discovered this tough, tenacious fighter with strong faith. And during one of the times we were working on the book, I was trying to gather information about and to try to explain how tough a fighter she was. And she mentioned this thing about her vomit bag, and she just kept going and just moved on. And I went, wait, what? Vomit bag? What's that? So this was during her time when she had chemo. And then she went to tell me that, well, she still does her treadmill, but she has her vomit bag, so she gets sick with chemo. She just throws up on her vomit bag, gets back on the treadmill. And I thought, that's it. We don't need to tell everybody how tough you are. That's the story right there. We'll just put that story in. That tells all that we need to know. So I knew at that point, as we worked, that we had a story. Carmen speaks for the National Foundation for Cancer Research in Washington, D.C., and the American Cancer Society, and I started to work with them and during the writing of this book, and one day I asked her, Dr. Baugh, who is the CEO of the National Foundation for Cancer Research in Washington, what is the longest survivor of a glioblastoma in the world? And she said, the longest we know of is 7 years. And then there's Carmen. And at that point, I knew we had to publish, we could get published. And this is Carmen right here. She's with us today. And sure enough, in March of 2020, Ambassador International decided to buy the book, and so we were on that journey, which took a year and a half. I worked with them and their editors, and I think we've really got a book that's like truly a page turner. It starts out on page 1 with a grand mal seizure and doesn't let go. So I wanted to call the book a cancer roller coaster ride with a happy ending. But her doctors gave us the title of the book, as in 2011 they began to call her The Miracle. So that's where we got our title. Some of the reviews online on Amazon and Goodreads say, holy moly, this is such a captivating book. Or, this book is an absolute joy to read. I really connected with Carmen's story and honestly couldn't put it down. Another one said, I think anyone dealing with any type of cancer or any challenge in life would benefit greatly from this book. And that's really what Carmen wanted from day one. She wanted to give people hope and encouragement from her story, and I hope that we've done that. She's truly, there's no statistic for her. She's off the map into some other off the table. So come by, we have copies. We got a special forum price today, $10. Thanks.
Hello everyone, I'm Jim Gibson. Thank you, Peggy, and the Pub Club, everybody that's worked so hard to put this together. I have just published my first book. Unfortunately, because of the supply problems that we're having with refrigerators and washing machines and cars and everything else, the printer, I've ordered 100 books. Well, they haven't arrived yet. So I've got 2 books here. But they're available on Amazon and you know, Barnes & Nobles and like that, in hardcover, paperback, and ebook. So I've written a little bit here about the book so that you can get an idea of what it's about. Several years ago, I decided to let the truth be told and started writing. It's the story of how my life was once unalterably and cruelly affected by the Vietnam War. Not Paid 11 Cents an Hour to Think is a memoir, my first published book. It's composed of 3 parts. In part 1, I describe my childhood experiences before the war, growing up here in Orange County. Part 2 is comprised of the stories of my experiences of the war while on the ground with the Army in Vietnam, serving there as a medic and ambulance driver. Part 3 is about my life as a Vietnam veteran, my eventual return to Vietnam, and my recovery from the war. The story takes off from 1963 and ends in 1993, a 30-year span of my personal history. It's an anti-war book, written from my own personal perspective. I have written it for people to better understand what can happen to us if we are not careful. We must be aware that sometimes wrong people and wrong forces can take control and wreak horrible consequences. This book is especially intended for young minds who might want to know about the Vietnam War. I began writing it several years ago after I discovered a dust-covered shoebox in my garage filled with the letters that I had written home to my mom and dad while I was in the war. My mother, who passed away many years ago, saved these letters. I wrote this book because I wanted my children to know about my experiences of the war, to hopefully give them a better understanding of who their father is. I've lived here in the village for more than 17 years now. Shortly after I moved in here, I resumed my love of oil painting. Some of you here today may know of me in this way. I have created a series of paintings which I call my Vietnam War series, one of which is on that easel back there. This series I have included in my book to bring a visual clarity to my book. Thank you.
Okay, I have to actually stand on my toes for this. You've got all sizes here at the club. This is my first meeting / event, and it's very charming. I'm having a good time. My name is Maureen Mccabe, my husband and our small puppy, and I moved during the pandemic from Spokane, Washington. We returned here to Orange County, which we left about 20 years ago, so we're really pretty thrilled to be back here again with the lovely weather. And so the book that is coming out in 2 weeks is got a Broadway sound to it. It's called Vintage Babes of Broadway, through the 20th century lens of Murray Corman. And the reason I found Murray Corman was because my dad, when he was tap dancing across the country in the 1930s, had some photos that were taken by him. He was very famous. In 1961, after 3 decades in having 2 wildly successful photographic studios in New York City, he died in 1961 at a relatively young age of 60-ish. And he kind of faded from view, and I think part of that may be because of Vietnam. It may be because people were watching more TV, because his clientele were the performers on Broadway and in Hollywood. And so there's quite a few famous people in the book that many people will be familiar with, because I'm just turned 70 this year, and I remember all of the people in the book, mostly. But there's people, and beautiful pictures by Murray Corman of people like Bob Hope, Anne Bancroft, Betty Grable, Loretta Young, Eva Gabor, Jackie Gleason, Julie Newmar. And that's just a sampling. There's many people that you might kind of remember. In fact, my husband remembered a J.P. Morgan that I did not remember her. All of the pictures, though, were digitized by the co-author of the book. He lives in Leeds, Alabama, and he he's retired now, but he was a graphic designer and did just a fabulous job on the layouts. So it's a fun book just to flip through. The first half of it is pretty much pictures of the movie stars and show business people. And then the second half of the book is about Murray Corman himself, because he was quite the character. So he was so prolific with his photographs that the New York Times and the newspapers in New York City, when they needed photographs of either a society person or some show business person, they would actually call Murray Corman to get those pictures for the newspaper. So there's a lot out on the internet about him, but nobody actually has done a book on him, so we're kind of excited that we're the first. Anyway, the book will be out on April Fool's Day, and as my third book, I must say this, unless you're a $1 million bookseller, I haven't found that I'm going to be, living the high life here in retirement. But it's been fun, really fun hobby. So anyway, please check out the book. It's vintagebabesofbroadway.com. And the books, again, will be out on Amazon in a couple weeks. And hope you'll take a look. Thank you.
Thank you. That's so touching. It's so nice to see everybody. Thanks, Peggy and everyone, for the beautiful organizing of this. And I'm so touched and honored to see everybody. So, my table has some books. It has some CDs, because I work with music. And then I've been doing these ekphrastic poems. My cousins take photographs. For example, this is a photograph, and I've been writing poems to go along with the photographs. And so this one I'm going to read because it was just Jack Kerouac's 100th birthday. So this seemed to be a good one for this. Let's see. Yeah. So this is called Daisy. I wonder if daisies go to the video store, come across Pull My Daisy, the beat film, and put it on thinking they're going to see a documentary? Or do they look to the book, Please Don't Eat the Daisies, as a friendly column on empathy? Do flowers buy buttons that say people power? What do flowers wear in their lapel? What do flowers look at for inspiration? Do their petals ever itch? Does a flower wince when it sees a vase? What gift does one send to flowers? Flowers know they don't have long to live. Therefore, every moment is simple and beautiful, an unexpected bouquet. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Peggy. Thank you all for attending today. And shout out to Jim. Thank you for your service. I wear this hat not because I'm proud that I was in Vietnam, but primarily to identify myself for others who were there. And we always strike up a conversation and trade stories and that sort of thing. So in any event, a quick bio. I'm from the near Chicago suburbs of Oak Park and River Forest. And one of our claims to fame is that Ernest Hemingway was born and raised there, and we both attended the same high school, but not at the same time. From there I went on to college as an English major. I've always been interested in reading and writing. And after that, I went to law school, and after graduation, I went to Vietnam. So my favorite job over there was acting for our battalion as a public information officer, which means war correspondent, news reporter, and photographer. And after that, coming home, I raised a family. I didn't think I'd be able to write while doing that. So once I retired in 2011, no more excuses. So I started writing my first book, Intrusion, and found out how difficult it is. Don't let anybody tell you it's not. Moved out here in 2012, and I've published 4 books so far. Intrusion is my first, and it's turned out to be the first in a 3-book series. So to give you a high-level idea of what the story's like, I want to just read the back cover. Tuesday morning changed Jeremy Chambers' world. A great family, upscale home, and a promising career. On the way to the train station, physics dictates the car would hit the deer. How could it stop inches from the dough? Why did the ID badge fail to scan at the office? Why does the computer screen turn blue and lock? Some invisible force has invaded his life. The blue screen appears on every computer screen he touches, preventing him from completing a major report on certain Canadian oil and gas companies. His co-workers are perplexed. Foreign hackers? Pressure ramps up when the FBI is ordered to protect Jeremy from mysterious assassins. With the prospect of losing his job, his wife, Megan, panics and takes their children to her parents' home in California. Close friends assist him in recapturing his quote-unquote normal life, but the force continues to control events. Follow Jeremy as he discovers strange new powers and tries to fit the pieces together. That's book 1 in the series. The second one's title is Phantasm, and the third is Emergence. My 4th book came out in, I believe it was July of 2020, and about 6 or 7 months later, I started getting contacts from media companies, and they wanted to partner with me to adapt the story to either a movie or a TV show or series. but when I delved into it a little further and looked at some contracts, they wanted me to put up some money, 5,000, 10, 15, even 20. And they would do the same, and they would do all the work and this, that, and the other thing. So I checked them out on Better Business Bureau and their websites, and reviews were mixed. Of course, on the website, they're only going to promote the success stories, but I decided, and I consulted with some close friends here in the village who have experience with Hollywood and how that whole process works, and this is not the normal way. So I rejected those offers, and now I'm up to about 30 such companies that contacted me, all with the same business model. So I've done a lot of rejecting here lately. So in any event, it's nice to know somebody's noticing the book. So I'll read the back cover of Trillions, and then I'll get out of here. David Knight, accounting director for a Chicago medical group, went to work on St. Patrick's Day. When checking his bank account, he discovered a huge deposit, source unknown. A lucky four-leaf clover, an accident, drug cartels, foreign nation, malicious organized crime. Is national security compromised? He learns he has been temporarily frozen out of the U.S. banking system, while the bank, then federal regulators and law enforcement agencies investigate. This apparent windfall initiates chaos in his life as he and his fiancée, Natalie, face intrusion into their wedding plans by a furtive woman, Maria. Dave's company, uncomfortable with the attention his situation has generated, fires him. He needs a lawyer, cash to pay bills, and a new job to resume his career. He begins a job search. A mysterious neighbor in his condo building offers him a part-time job working as his accountant. Lucius owns businesses that provide security services for microchip companies and secure distribution of olive oil for European farmers and corporate growers. Dave takes over the finances so Lucius can spend more time prospecting for new clients. Dave notices large salaries for employees and unusual fees paid to officials in foreign countries. Did he get himself into something illegal? As federal investigations intensify, Dave finds he is the prime criminal suspect regarding the deposit in his account. His only friend is Natalie, until an FBI agent offers his personal assistance. The team of investigators discovers a strange one-way portal in cyberspace through which the funds may have been deposited in Dave's account, but the team cannot penetrate the portal to trace the funds. Is Maria involved? Is Lucius? Dave struggles to normalize his life and wonders when this fiasco will end. I just want to mention the deposit in his account was almost $2 trillion. So, thank you.
I don't know who else said that this was their first event with the Publishing Club, but it's mine too. Thank you so much for having me here. I write fiction and poetry, and I don't have any books. I actually don't have any books. They are all on Kindle, Amazon, 2 novels and a book of poetry. I'm planning to put the book of poetry on Audible, and I'm working with the narrator to get it onto Audible. And I also intend to have one of my books in print by summer. So I'm doing it all myself, and it takes a lot of time. But I thought I'd share with you some poetry and a section of one of the novels. This is from my book, Chasing the Past and Other Poems. Chasing the past, she knelt among the hillside flowers and touched the bachelor buttons, quiet blues that stretched to the mountains before her. Above the mountains, low clouds hung, out of balance with the sky, and drifted over pine forests to the camouflaged past of deer, elk, mountain lion, and bear, where hunters, dressed in their skins, crouched, waiting for the hunt to begin. And this is a second poem from that. This poem won an award, and Gwendolyn Brooks was the judge, so I felt wonderful that this poem was in that competition. Grandmother's Old Featherbed. Grandmother's old featherbed was 2 floors up in the dark, uninhabited part of a past life. Rust-colored, puffed up. We'd race for her room, poke open the door, jump into nothing that was something. Our laughter turned to hesitation. Alone we were, 2 floors up. We made ourselves afraid, reveling in the speed that we tore down the stairs to where soft voices, speaking in Polish, soothed us into sensibility. And this one, beginning, is from my novel called Crystal's Notebook, not a romance. And this is just the first part of it. We're hearing it through Crystal's voice. Chapter 1. You can call me Crystal. Consider it a true identity, or at the very least that I am writing a true story to keep track of my junior year in high school. I began writing these pages in a notebook in 11th grade advanced English, but what I wrote first became 2 jumbled bits and pieces of writing. I crumpled the pages, tossed them away. I started over. I knew that I couldn't write for only 5 minutes every day, keep a true and complete record of my life, and at the same time answer what an English teacher like Mrs. Hampton demanded from me. I would increase my writing time by writing outside of class. I got the official okay from Mrs. Hampton to write as many pages as I wished in a notebook. Now the year is over. I turned in my notebook on June 7th, got it back with a big red check mark. No grade anywhere in sight. I have no idea what my grade was for that class assignment, but the grade didn't matter. What happened that year is what counts. So that's one of my novels on Amazon. I'm presently working on one called Shadow to the Moon. It's a story of a young woman. She doesn't marry the man that she loves, and when he comes back into town many years later for a funeral, she has to decide if she will stay with the man to whom she is married or leave him for the boy that she once loved. Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Hi, I'm Phil Silverman from back east, New Jersey, and I write mostly for the back east boomer. Writing since age 6, been published since about age 21, and like variety, poems, muses, short plays. What I'm really talking about more enthusiastically lately is I reprinted a musical based something like on Cabaret. Think of the movie Cabaret. I didn't see the play, couldn't afford it. And it's called Ruby and Lee, the musical. And it's done in a respectful way, but you know, with this a YouTube culture, online culture, you know, suddenly you're out of work for 6 months and you become an expert on the Civil War and all these different quote-unquote conspiracy theories. Anyway, this one is called Ruby and Lee, the musical, and I have all the familiar faces actually singing and dancing. That's the one I really would like you to check out. Right now I'm going to do 2 songs, 2 original songs, original lyrics, and you'll see that my poetry you might describe as bubblegum poetry, in the best sense. Like 1, 2, 3, red light, remember that hit? This is lighthearted stuff. For the boomer back east. And I do voices of all the boomer legends too. And this, I'm going to, in this funny position, I want to do a song which is a tribute to Fats Domino. Fats Domino called I'm All Alone in the World. Now picture Fats Domino. Took a walk in the park. My girlfriend, she wanna talk. But now I see it's not about me. I'm all alone in the world. If they send me out to war, you can drive my Cadillac car. But now I see it's not about me. I'm all alone in the world. If I leave this mortal coil, rotate my tires and check my oil, but now I see it's not about me. I was alone in the world. I was alone in the world. Fats, me, thank you. Not Fats, that's done by Phil Domino. The next one is a tribute to another boomer legend that I write about and think about, Johnny Cash. I wrote this with some help from Brute Bolt in 1975. And it goes, well, I'm tired, sick and tired of being tried on the line. Let bygones be bygones, be bygones. And now I'm rolling on, little baby, I'll soon be gone. You're gonna have to make it on your own. Well, I'm tired, sick and tired of being tried on the line. Let bygones be bygones, be bygones. You better face the fact, I'm Jack Kerouac. I'll leave you to your bonbons and Big Macs. Hey! Thank you, folks. My table is set up right there. I want to say thank you. My second book is our second book. Cherie and me wrote it together. It's called The Boomer Rang Twice. The Boomer Rang Twice. And it's thrills, chills, suspense, and cats. A lot about cats. Thank you so much, Peggy. Thank you.
Thank you, Peggy. You know, as a proud member of this club, treasurer, membership chair, one of the editors of the Village Stories anthology, I'm deeply grateful to so many in this club for encouraging me in my writing and introducing me to the world of publishing. Marcia Hackett introduced me to my editor, and I wouldn't have published my first book without that introduction. My journey as an author actually began about 7 years ago when I started writing my own memoir. However, it came to a screeching halt in February 2020. My aunt and uncle were celebrating their 70th wedding anniversary when my cousin asked me, "So Nancy, have you read Nanny's story?" Nanny was our great-grandmother, and I said, "Nanny's story? No, tell me about it." It was then that my cousin brought out a metal box, 24 inches by 12 inches by 6 inches high, of a 580-page typewritten manuscript over 100 years old. It was tucked away for many years, unknown to most of us in our family. With the coronavirus just beginning, I suddenly found myself at a stay-at-home order with lots of time to read 580 pages. Her stories pulled me into the life of a remarkable woman with an insatiable desire to serve. This was a story that needed to be told. Nanny, whose real name is Louise Sullivan, was an amazing woman with a heart filled with love. Love for over 170 babies whom she fed, clothed, bathed, and nurtured throughout a 13-year period from 1915 to 1928. Nanny never took one penny for any of her baby work, but felt directed by God to care for her babies. After nurturing unwanted babies in her community, she paired them with permanent families, initially in Chicago, Illinois, and ultimately in Pasadena, California. Nanny devoted her work to God and felt guided by Him to do her baby work, dedicating her baby nursery to the memory of her biological son, Kenzie, who died of diphtheria at age 17. Kenzie was the one that went with her when she got her first baby. Through my own faith, I felt compelled to tell Nanny's story just to the world, just as she would have wanted. I immediately partnered with a cousin who shared my fascination with Nanny's life. We connected with the last two remaining children of her last two babies. The four of us became determined to make Nanny's dream come true. Additionally, 3 of Nanny's grandchildren, 2 of whom are still alive and in their 90s, gave insight into Nanny's life through their own personal experiences. While simple editing was within our capabilities, since I had been a teacher of special education students for almost 40 years, organizing this story from Nanny's stream of consciousness rambling format became a daunting task. We are incredibly grateful to our outstanding editor, Nick Cattleman, who was the November 2021 presenter for this club, who helped us tell Nanny's story in a concise, cohesive manner. My babies, my promise, the journey of my soul, is more than a treasure for our family legacy. It is our desire to dedicate this book to those who selflessly care, foster, and adopt the unwanted, vulnerable children of this world. It is a story of how one woman's faith and devotion can make a difference in the life of a child. That book is on my table when this is over. If you want to stop by and purchase one, you are welcome to do that. In addition, on my table, if I could just put this little plug in, we have the Village Stories from 2015 when they started. Marcia's holding them up back there. And those are only $5 each for the remaining, for 2015 to 2020. And this most current one, 2021, is available for $10. I also, with my many hats, have membership forms and October Authors Forum forms if you want to sign up for that. So see me afterwards, and thank you so much. Oh, and Peggy, where's Peggy? Yeah, where are my books, Peggy?
I'm another newbie, so I thought since I'm new, I would just go over my own writing process, perhaps to inspire others who are thinking, how do you get into it? And so for me, it's been very unfolding and self-revelatory, and as with many people, it began with writing a memoir. And what was great about that was to be able to pull all those threads and to then have all this material, because we know that writers take material from their own life to create their fiction. So then the fiction came next, and that was a book called Nonprofit Girl, which turned into a trilogy. And it's a story of a young woman who has an unwanted pregnancy and has to decide what to do about it. And that is not my story. I'm the mother who adopted a boy who was given up. But the story might be of his birth mother. By the close of that book, I was in love with my characters and unwilling to abandon them. And so then 2 more books came to form the trilogy, each jumping forward about 7 years, and in that way creating a family saga going over 15 years. So I have those books at my table. And then once that project was finished, I was sort of emptied out and ready to try to really imagine something outside of myself. And so I wanted to write an old-fashioned romance, kind of a Jane Austen thing. And by happenstance, this was when I was still in Washington, D.C., gradually retiring, filling my time writing. So just as I had this question in my mind, where was this romance going to be, the Washington Post published a graphic of the 200 years of history of our National Mall. And I got totally engrossed in that. It's an incredible place, full of interesting characters over the past 200 years. It's our front yard. I thought that it would have some appeal to so many people who travel to DC and go to all the wonderful museums and everything and memorials on the National Mall. So that was the birth of this book, Love on the Mall. And what I did to really draw this romance out was to make it last over 20 years. And so throughout those 20 years, these people are crossing each other's paths, and they have many tipping points that I call them tipping points. Probably you'll recognize them from your own relationships. So I thought I would just read a little philosophical piece of this that talks about those tipping points in our lives. Trajectories begin from a tiny fixed point where past meets the present moment to offer fresh choices towards alternative futures. That point is as fleeting as a moment in time, as fragile as an unspoken emotion, as powerful as a life-determining choice. Chattering minds interplay with attacks of emotions, creating strong cross-currents that pull us to yes or no. The wind of daydreams surrounds the point, blowing us towards new destinies. Even the firm ground of memory becomes unsteady, and we balance on one foot. We tip forward, backward, and to both sides as our bodies balance impulses. Where our other foot lands determines our trajectory, a future we fall into. So now I'm working on a new mall book. You know, I kind of get into things. And so this new book is set much earlier in time. This one, Love on the Mall, is set between the dedication of the Lincoln Memorial and the Jefferson Memorial, World War I to World War II. And the new one, likely Faith on the Mall, goes back to the dedication of the Washington Monument in 1848 and travels 15 years to Emancipation Day in 1863 in the middle of the Civil War. And this time I bring forward the voices of 3 siblings. Over time, as I've been writing, I'm able to write characters that are less like me and pull more from historical imaginings. But the exception is that my voice as a writer cannot resist having a feminist in my book, in each and every one. So next I hope to stretch my imagination more and do something magical. Please check out my website at annbeltran.com and sign up for my monthly newsletter. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank everyone for being here today. And I am new to the woods. I moved here in last summer. I had been away from California for many years. I had gone to Santa Barbara High School, and from there, all those years later, 40, 50, 60 years later, I have been leading a very magical life, even before Santa Barbara. But I find myself in another magic place in Laguna Woods. And interestingly enough, I was the one who won the Miracle book. And I moved back to California because my son has a rare form of cancer. And I needed to be near family. And so he's really in a battle, as you know. And right now he's actually, this country has run out of options for him, and he and his wife, who's a saint, and two boys are in Barcelona, and he's getting therapy there. So, you know, life is precious, time is precious, and your expression of creativity and writing and is such a human thing to do, and these stories have really touched me today. We've lived in a golden time, and as long as we're here to tell the stories, gratitude for that, you know. Briefly, but thank you for that book, and I'm anxious to read it. Just a little background. My dad created the aviator sunglass design during World War II, and he had the government contract, and my mother was an artist. And so I come from a both parents were very creative, and the sunglass era, we lived on a boat from New Jersey. We sailed from New Jersey to Puerto Rico, where my dad had factories. And so we lived on a boat, a house occasionally, but my formative years were spent living on a boat. And in New Jersey and Puerto Rico. So I learned to speak Spanish by age 3, 4. I went to a Spanish nursery school. But living on a boat, really, you learn so much with so little. And part of that is you don't lollygag. You know, if something, oh, there's a hole over there. Oh, well, fix it later, Louie. No, you don't fix it later because you're on the boat. And then you know, you fix the hole now. And so you learn to do things and get them done. You don't put them off. And I think writing, painting, any creative act, it's not I'm going to do it. They are the going to do people. But as you know, just doing it is what it's all about. Doing it is your life. And not to put it off and get it done. So all of you know about that. And thank you for doing it. And so those years on the boat, and then led to living in Santa Barbara, going to Santa Barbara High School. That was a golden time. And I went into the Peace Corps, Bolivia, another adventure. I've led a very adventurous life and one of doing. And Peace Corps Bolivia, went to Sarah Lawrence College, took myself back to Sarah Lawrence 20, 30 years later and got a degree in art and education, master's in education, and became a teacher. And I lived in New York, which taught me a lot. Every place I've lived has been a magic place, and I say a magic place, and there are pockets of creativity on the planet, and New York is a pocket of creativity. Santa Barbara is one, Laguna Woods is one. But from New York, I went to Fairhope, Alabama, on the eastern shore of Mobile Bay, and that is also a pocket of creativity there. And I'm so happy for my my Southern experience. People in the South are storytellers. They're, and I had an art gallery, and I was a painter, and that's where I wrote the book. And the South is there's a feeling of community there, and the community is gossip, and the gallery was a pocket of creativity and gossip and stories, and so that's where I wrote this book. And I think every poem is symbolic of something else. But I just briefly want to read The Room. And this is about clutter, and clutter creates anxiety. So this is The Room. You wanted the room empty. Less is more. You're into Zen. Clarify the environment. First you'll clean. As you clean, you discard. All the superfluous has to go. Go where? Out. Out of here. Every object is a memory. Memories in themselves are fine, but in order to retain their dignity, memories need privacy. Memories don't belong on shelves. Memories should not be dust collectors. You want engraved on your cremation urn, excuse the dust. Everything overstuffed and underneath has to go. Collections have to go. Reproductions have to go. Anything plastic has to go. Formica is definitely out. Dust balls, fur balls, and high balls have to go. Doilies, throw pillows, scatter rugs, wall hangings, posters, forgotten lists, old newspaper and hand-me-down magazines must be tossed. End tables, footstools, lazy boys, convertible sofas, scary nightlights, card tables, TV trays, and empty boxes must disappear. Window shades, Venetian blinds, layers of curtains, valances, swags, dust ruffles, and ball fringe must be banished. Once the clutter goes, you'll be able to think straight and breathe easier. Once you forbid the odds and ends, you'll be able to get on with it. Knickknacks should be illegal. Once you get the point across that the room is not a souvenir in an international airport, once you make that visual statement, then perhaps the message will be received. Whether or not the message is understood is a moot point. The entire room has been a moot point. Forget it. The only way to forget it is to clean it out. Douche the room, that's it. A room cleanse. Give the room a bath and wipe it dry. Looking around, the feel is so much lighter now. The space is clear now. The windows can stay, the door stays. You'd like that wall to go, along with the ceiling, but you can't have everything. There's just one thing left that's taking up too much space now. You must leave the room. Thanks.
Hello, everybody. I'm delighted to be here, and I want to thank my friend Marcia Hackett, who seems to help all sorts of people here. But it was she who encouraged me to come to this meeting, and I originally was a little naive because the title is publishing, and I thought, I don't know if I'm really in the mood to write another book. I've already written two, and isn't it time to sort of relax? But before I tell you about the two books, I do want to put out that my understanding is there's a number of people here who probably know creative ways of republishing or publishing in a new format. For example, whether it is Audible or book on demand. Several of you have mentioned Amazon, and when I sold my book on Amazon, I regularly lost anywhere from $1 to $2.50, literally, by the time I had to mail the book to them, and the discount was so huge. So maybe that has changed for the better. I really would love to hear from some of you about that. To the books themselves. So My career has been, in terms of bread and butter, has always been academic, but I am a psychologist and I've always had a private practice as well. That was smaller. Rolling the clock back to the mid-90s, I had an opportunity to take a sabbatical and was not only teaching human sexuality classes, but also helping people who had sexual concerns. And I really endorsed using what I call a sex-positive approach to helping people enrich their sex lives. And it's also very helpful to give between-session assignments. So I was having to say, well, maybe you could go over here and get this book for this help on communication and this other one on body image and so forth. So my first book, Love Skills, is a book that is fundamentally a compendium of outside exercises that people can engage in. And at this point in time, this is unusual, but I have read thousands of reviews of my own book. It gets a little embarrassing because students it's been on an optional book list, and of course half the students want to read the book that the professor wrote, so they read it. And so I know for a fact that it's really, really helpful. And covers 4 main areas. It covers communicating, I call it vertical and horizontally, about sex, talking. It covers body image, body love, touching exercises, and then expanding your repertoire. Getting a little more creative and out of the rut, as it were. My second book is the result of a friend saying, for God's sake, you're so much interested in food, you want to be, and you're in the field of sex, you want to be writing about aphrodisiacs. Well, again, as an academic, I said, I need some data. So I created several surveys and went into classes and gave extra credit to students who would recruit people who were over 30, because I didn't just want to study the aphrodisiac interests of 18 to 23-year-olds. So I indeed gathered my data and also gathered all sorts of recipes. And owing to a trip to Egypt, which sounds a little unusual, but owing to a trip to Egypt and meeting somebody who said, well, if you're interested in aphrodisiacs, I hope you're going to go to the Temple of Karnak. That's where you're going to see the White Chapel, and you're going to see Priapus. Actually, was it Priapus? It doesn't matter. There was a god, an Egyptian god, who was the fertility god. Actually, it was Min, M-I-N. And he is surrounded by romaine lettuce. And romaine lettuce, it turns out, is quite erect. And it turns out that the ancient Egyptians and certain other people considered romaine lettuce aphrodisiac because when you break a little piece of it, a white milky substance is emitted. Now, I ran home back to Southern California and tried buying some romaine, and I did not get the same results. But when my neighbor was growing it, fresh, indeed, it was accurate information. But that experience led me to get very interested in the lore of all sorts of foods. I cover 88 in my book, and I cover, based on peer-reviewed research, not little internet stuff, the lore of 88 foods and their sexy nutrients. Because most foods with an aphrodisiac reputation happen to be very healthy. And I think it's a much more positive way of encouraging people to eat well than saying you need your this because it'll be good for you. So the book is half all of the aphrodisiac lore, and the other half is 101 recipes from all diverse sources. You are invited to come over to my table and try some very yummy cookies that do not have any flour in them. They do not have any oil in them, nor egg yolk, but there's some other egg product in there. And anyway, they're lovely recipes, and it's a wonderful gift to give people. And if you don't like to cook, you can still read the first half of the book. I thank you for listening.
Well, I'm also a newbie to this group, and I want to thank Peggy and Sunshine, and particularly my friend Nancy, for encouraging me to be here and to letting me know about it. So thank you, Nancy. It was nice. It's really fun hearing all these people tell about their books. Mine came out of sort of necessity, I guess. I went to Iraq in 2004. As you know, the war started in 2003. I went to Iraq in May of 2004. I owned a political consulting firm, which I sort of just retired from. And one of my clients had won a big, huge contract to improve or restructure all of Iraq's water infrastructure. And so part of that contract, over 200,000 contracts were let in that first 6 months, 8 months of the war, and only about 10 of them had one 2-sentence description, which is, as part of your contract, you must include a plan to involve the Iraqi women in the reconstruction process. So of course nobody knew what this meant, and my client didn't either. And he said, well, you're a feminist, you need to figure this out. And so I did, and I wrote a 12-page plan to help the Iraqi women to be involved in the new, whatever the new economy was. And to me that was the same as it would be here, you know, getting women to enable women to get same contracts as men do, enable women to be in the forefront of things and be allowed to bid for contracts. And the people giving these contracts were Army Corps of Engineers. So they weren't Iraqis, they were Army Corps of Engineers, US people. But they were afraid of Iraqi women. They didn't know how to talk to them, they didn't know what to say. So part of my job was to help Iraqi women get US government contracts so they could build their own businesses. The second thing was to train Iraqi women in various and sundry programs like finance and business and communications, and there was resources. There were 15 of them, I think. I can't remember them all now. But anyway, so I didn't have any resources, so I had to look on the web at night and try to find a way to build a program to teach the Iraqi women how to do these things. So I built programs, and then my associate, I brought a young woman to Iraq with me who was Iraqi American. I brought her to Iraq with me so she could help me speak the language and connect with the Iraqi women, because I wanted to leave in 6 months, and I ended up staying for 22 months. I jokingly say I couldn't find a bus home. But anyway, so that was it. So in essence, I trained about 1,900 women in business and finance and all sorts of programs, and writing the programs at night, and then my associate would go out into Baghdad during the day and find a professor who would teach to the curriculum, because we didn't have a year to train, we only had 10 days to train each woman. And then I helped Iraqi women get US government contracts, and that was a trial in and itself. In order to get a contract, a business contract, the Iraqi women would have to go on the US government page, find the Corps of Engineers, find the country, then find the region, and then find the various and sundry things, including what RFPs were available. So very difficult process. And of course, our government, not having respect for other countries, had all the contracts in English and didn't even respect the Iraqis enough to put it in Arabic. So my job was to put the projects, the RFPs in English, and teach them how to respond to an RFP, a request for proposal, which is very difficult. If anybody's ever seen an RFP from the government, it's about 180 pages and about 100 and 50 of those pages is all government gobbledygook, so nobody understands it. Anyway, that's what my book is about. My book is about 22 months that I spent in Iraq. Most people don't know anyone that went to Iraq, let alone a civilian, a woman. So I spent 22 months during the worst part of the war. This tells you about all the things that I had to go through, which were pretty fun. And the name of the book is because I have always owned my own business since I was 20. And so I always made my own decisions. I always did everything on my own. I never experienced anybody saying you're out of your lane. And when I was in Baghdad, oftentimes, if you knew me, you would know that I was often out of my lane doing things that wasn't part of the government contract. And so that's why I named my book Out of My Lane. By the time I left Iraq in 22 months, I had 15 letters of complaint in my file because I'd been out of my lane. And the stories about those are pretty incredible. Anyway, if anybody wants to buy the book, they're here. It's on Amazon as well. Thank you again, Peggy, for whatever. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, I gave you one that was addressed.
Yeah.
It was endorsed. There, right there.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that's true. You who want books, get them dedicated. The author's here, after all. So this goes to Marcia. Is Marcia here? Oh, okay.
Push this back further.
So my last author is the very famous and wonderful and brilliant Peggy P. Edwards. So I'll just say a few words. According to the newspaper last week, Latinos are now the majority community in California, which means you better become bilingual because they are. And bilingualism is exercise to the brain the way physical exercise is to the body. So I wrote alphabeto crossover. Well, they're like fables because they have morals. And also on my table are coloring pages, Peggyisms. So make sure you take this. Now, before I close, I have a bunch of people to thank. Of course, our team, Sunshine, Nancy, Marcia, are the Village Stories team, and Michael is the four of us edit your stories. So if you joined, you get to send us up to 2,500 words, stories, poems, songs, whatever. Lucy and Doug, Lucy Parker and Doug Sainsbury, thank you so much for filming this at the last moment. And Charlie, thank you, Charlie Redner, for filming us. Leon St. Hilaire's working on our website. Make sure you check it out. It's amazing. And also, I've got to thank Anita Ghosh, who wrote the wonderful Globe article. And of course, thank you all the participants, and welcome
new members. And so you all got always. So let's end the program with always, and then everybody sell your books. So, are you ready? Everybody got it? Always ready? This is that very famous song by Irving Berlin, who was Jewish and came from Russia. How appropriate. So Phil, you're gonna play with us. I'll be loving you always, siempre, with a love that's true, always, siempre. When the things you planned need a helping hand, I will understand, always, siempre. Days may not be fair, always, siempre. That's when I'll be there, always, siempre. Not for just an hour, not for just a day, not for just a year, but always, always. Thank you.